Hey, it's Shan here. This week I speak with artist, graphic designer, expat who lives in Mexico, and influential skateboarder, Mr. Steve Tierney. Steve joins me from his home in Oaxaca, Mexico for a nice long conversation. It was a good chat. Steve's got a lot to say. He's a deep thinker who has had a really rich and interesting life. Steve takes us on a journey from his early days growing up in Engadine, which is a southern suburb of Sydney, all the way through to where he is now, raising a family in what could be considered a developing country in the area of Oaxaca, Mexico, and the adventurous life that him and his family lead. Steve said something interesting in this episode. He said, I really try not to live in the past. I live in the now, and I want to plan for the future. And he's not hanging on to anything. He takes us through his time in the early 90s where he was quite a predominant skateboarder in Sydney. He was sponsored by various brands like Omni and Quicksilver. He also had his own board company called CLS, which was like an abbreviation for the word class, with him and his best friends. He talks about being a graphic designer for other skateboarding companies of that era, graphic designing for Skateboarding Australia magazine, and other work in that area. But he said that he was always really focused on his art as the end goal, and skateboarding was never really the end goal for him. But he was so naturally good at it, and he had such an amazing style and overall aesthetic and steez, and very mesmerizing and fun to watch. And he featured in a lot of magazines. But we don't talk too much about skateboarding. We go more on a journey into his life as an expat, which has been a very large part of his life journey over the last 20 years. And him and his long-term partner's decision to, move their child around and immerse their family in culture and language and different food and adventure. So it's a great episode. I really liked hearing about his art that he does. He does these beautiful collage artworks, and you can check it out on his website. I'll put a link to that in this episode's show notes. Talks about, earning a living as I guess somewhat of a digital nomad, graphic designing to pay the bills alongside his passion projects that he also sells. So check it out. And as always, this episode is for my children, Clementine and Otis. So I hope that one day they go back and watch this or listen to this and find the inspiration that I found speaking with Mr. Steve Tierney, everybody. Cheers.
I think of you now, I think of like Jules and like
Yeah,
definitely like now crew, mostly you and but mostly Julian. And I remember, yeah, for sure. I think like you had a photo in Slam, right? Down at Aladala, that over the hip.
yeah, yeah. Good
Yeah, yeah,
memory,
yeah.
man.
At that comp.
Wow.
I just remember that comp, dude. That was a sick
It
fucking,
was a
was it a comp or a
conqueror.
demo or an opening or something? Was it the opening of
That
the comp of the
that was
art?
as an opening, and I love that photo because O'Mealy took it, and
It's a sick
I mean,
photo.
I know
Yeah.
he's a good friend of yours, but I'm a huge fan of O'Mealy's work, and to have
Oh
a
man,
photo
he's
by him,
a,
it was such an
yeah,
honor.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
man.
No,
So
that was
what?
there was some sick times down there.
Yeah, I mean that era, the '90s, it's been coming up a lot in the podcast of late. If you had to like
Mm.
sum up your life in the mid to late '90s, how would you do that?
For sure, like massive focus on skateboarding. Obviously, like that was what we were doing. Definitely, I graduated high school in '94, but I was really really focused on studying. Is that cool? Sound sorry. Um,
No, I was just pointing because I graduated in 1994 as
all right.
well.
So yeah, I obviously was just fucking. I was a skate rat and skating and trying to get better, and but I was pretty focused on my like art and design career, or at least like not thinking, oh, I'm just going to go off and be a pro skater and not do anything. I was like pretty focused. I went straight from high school into like a design degree and was studying. Um, but for sure, like all weekend after uni or whatever, like college, I was skating all weekend. I was skating. Everything was skating. So yeah,
Did you have a vision for your life post skateboarding career back
post
then?
skating, like
Like back
um,
then,
like
did you?
kind of. I mean, not really a vision for sure. I wanted to be an artist or a designer. I didn't want to. I was not like. I don't think. What was interesting was like with my tight crew, like Davo and Mick Ewan and those guys and Sid even. I don't think any of us really thought, oh yeah, this is what we're going to just go off and be pro skaters. Well, except maybe Phil Mackey, because he did go to the States and give it a good go for a while. And but definitely me and Mick Ewan and probably, I don't know, yeah, definitely me and Mick Ewan were studying and probably didn't think, oh, you know, I'm just going to be a pro skater and that's it. I was like, I'll skate for a while as long as I'm good at it, and then I want to be an artist or I want to, you know, do this, because I probably was pretty like I'm pretty like structured. I'm not structured, but like, you know, I was like, oh fuck, there's no way I'm gonna put or gamble everything on being a pro skater.
It's kind of
especially
refreshing to hear.
Oh man, because I mean, of course there was like Mumford and those guys. I just didn't put myself on that level. It was like Mumford or Chad or you know, and Dustin came a bit after us, and full props to him for doing what he did, because Mumford was probably really one of the first, like, in a way, like in my generation. But yeah, so Dustin showed, you know, you can go over and do it, but fuck, you've got to work hard, man. I just, like, to be honest, like my skating, I skated good for sure. I know I did, but I skated pretty safe. Like I wasn't going to go fucking kill myself skating for skateboarding's sake, you know what I mean? I took it pretty safely. I had my tricks that I like to do and I did them well, and I never really injured myself. So I don't know if that says I didn't really go for it, but I never really fully fucked myself skating. Like I've had definitely gnarly slams, but no knee reconstructions and no massive like ankle injuries or anything.
Yeah. Was there ever a period where you did like make a livable income from skateboarding? Ever?
Nah, I think like there was a point around 97, 98 when I was sponsored by like Omni and Quicksilver and Converse, and they were paying me money, but it was like, and that felt cool because they felt like real sponsors. Like Converse and Quicksilver felt like real sponsors. It was like a contract, and it was like, in Australia at least, it was, for me, it felt like, oh, okay, this is pretty real. But I mean, from memory, it was like $250 a month or something, and just free shoes, like unlimited shoes and clothing. And so I could probably sell some shoes or whatever, but it was no way livable. I had a career, like I had a job straight out of college, and I was skating still.
What would you say that art was doing for you on a personal level compared to skateboarding, even back then?
That was just, yeah, it was something like I needed to do. Like, and I think any artist or creative person would say the same thing. It's like, you can't not do it. Like, so I was drawing my own, like as far as skateboards go. I mean, I was doing graphics for skateboards from a pretty early age. Like when I got on Omni, he put a board out for me in 94 when I was still in high school, and I did that graphic, and that was awesome for a kid in high school to like have a board and do the graphic. And then I obviously studied design and knew all the design programs, and because I knew everyone, like Christian West and all those guys and Glenn Scott, who were all doing their own companies, and none of them knew how to use the design programs. I was the guy who knew how to do all that shit. So I basically was like an art director for a whole bunch of skate companies straight out of, while I was still studying and while I was out of college. So that was inspirational, or at least like got me motivated for that side of things. But also I studied art all through high school. I was always drawing cartoons and making art. And so it was just like, yeah, it's just part of me. Like in a way, more so than skateboarding, in a way, like I'm obviously a skateboarder for life. You can't not be when you put that much into it. And probably anyone is that's ever skated, really. You know, you see guys now who are in their 40s and 50s who are like, oh yeah, I skated when I was 16, and they come back to it, and there's a real sentimentality and like thing to it that it just stays with you. I mean, there's that thing everyone says, like, we see the world different. Like, I still look at spots, man, that I'm never going to skate. I take photos of spots and send them to like Davo and guys, and like, check out this spot, I'm never going to skate it. but it's like the sickest spot. And I go past it every day and I look at it and I'm like, oh, fuck, it'd be so sick to do whatever on it. And I just know I'm never going to skate it, or I'm never going to be able to do what I would have done 20 years ago at least.
You're looking at the landscape through a completely different lens.
Sure. I love that.
It's very obvious that like skateboarding and creativity go hand in hand, and there's been many, famous skate artist combinations over the years. For me personally, like Mark Gonzalez has always been such an influence. His skateboarding and the intertwining of skateboarding and art. And I've actually got a Gonz board behind me there, but with his artwork on it. But in your opinion, like, why do you think this occurs? Like, you kind of answered it, but why do you think that's such a commonality?
I mean, well, skateboarding is a creative sport, right? So, I mean, it's like you could put it in with, and again, like the word sport people don't like, right, associating with skateboarding, but it's like, it's hard not to because it's athletic or whatever, but it's a creative endeavor. But and I'm not afraid to call it a sport, but I put it back to a lot of just the graphics on skateboards, like the visual graphic of a skateboard. So everyone remembers their first board, like it just stays in your head. I remember my local shop and being in there and looking at all the boards and just being and drawing on your grip tape and like but just the graphics, the board graphics themselves encourage you to think visually about your skateboard. So whether you're like an actual artist or into creating art yourself, doesn't necessarily matter. The graphic of your board, whether you're an illustrator or an artist of any kind, it just stays with you. The visual element of that board, and I think there's plenty of people who want to be artists or creative kind of motivations will take it to the next step and like possibly replicate. How often will we all copying the logo, like drawing the parallel bones symbol, like, or all that shit, you know what I mean? Like, we're all doing that. And whether you became an artist afterwards or not doesn't matter, but there was some creativity that was, kind of just came out of the energy of the graphics, of that.
I always really liked your aesthetic in skateboarding, your style, and, you featured, like, there was a period of time there you were literally featuring in Australian skateboard magazines weekly.
Yeah.
I mean, how much thought were you putting into the aesthetic backdrop of the photos you were getting? So obviously you were like, I want to get this trick, but were you ever like composing as well, the overall aesthetic, working with the photographer, or was that something you were always considering? Like,
for sure.
Even down to what you were wearing for the photo?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, for sure.
Massively?
Oh, definitely, man. Yeah, hugely. And like having O'Mealy as a close friend was incredible because me and him clicked. Like, not to say he didn't click with others, but there was a point when like Davo, I think, was living over in Japan and a few guys were traveling. I think Mick was like really heavily doing his PhD. He did a PhD in like mechanical engineering and he was still skating and whatnot, but he was out of the scene a little bit. And I guess I wasn't seeing, we weren't all hanging out as much, but I was still sponsored by Quicksilver and Converse. And me and O'Mealy like used to go on these solo missions all the time, but it was mostly my, I guess, need to, because I was like maybe shooting a Quicksilver out or something. But I loved the connection we had of like, okay, let's go out and basically plan this shoot. We might even like do a few shots of me like hanging out. Like I like the behind the scenes side of skateboarding as well in terms of photos. Like there was a photo sequence I had for it was Quicksilver, and it was a switch 180 over this pole thing down in Martin Place, and I snapped my board, and so I didn't have another board to do it on that day. But Amelia got the sequence back and it just looked fucking rad. I love the sequence. So I ran the sequence as the ad. And of course, most people wouldn't ever run a slam or a bail or something like that. But to me, it was like, this tells me way more about skateboarding than if I'd made that trick and rode away. Like that's like the shit that no one talks about, like that no one really really sees all that shit, all that behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, but me particularly, like being who I am, I don't take myself like super seriously. Of course, I might have seemed like it maybe back in the day. I didn't talk much, and I was pretty like focused, I guess. But I mean, I take the piss out of myself for sure with all that stuff. But I was like, I knew what looked good, and I wanted to make what I was doing look good. And yeah, it was for sure. I thought about it.
I got two questions. I just want to go back a step. You said you didn't talk
Yeah,
much. How do you think that was
yeah.
perceived? How do you think that was perceived by people that didn't know you very well?
I don't know, man. It's funny because I'm so happy you said what you said of like, I kind of that you whatever appreciated my style, whatever. I had got a good vibe off me because honestly, like, I thought people thought I was pretty not like art myself or whatever, but I just didn't like I didn't talk to people. I just wasn't very. I was pretty not shy, but I was like very introverted, inner. I just wasn't the type of person who's going to go and talk. I don't go to. I'm not. You know, if you're in a room with 10 people sitting on a couch talking, I'll wait my turn and I won't say anything until I've got something to say, and I might not even say anything. I'm happy just to listen to people. And when I was younger, for sure that was the case. And when you're around a bunch of young dudes who are all trying to scramble for attention or be something or get the photo that day or whatever, I would probably just do my thing, try not to like get in anyone's way necessarily or whatever, and just be there when it was important, say what I needed to say when it was important. But yeah, for sure, like honestly, I wasn't sure like what you would have thought of me back in the day because I'm sure we crossed paths so many times, and I'm sure we probably didn't talk, and I might have said hi to you once here and there. But I was close with Jules and Cam and those guys, and I remember you being around. But there's just I don't know, I don't know. It was just my personality at the time. It took me a while to really whatever come out of my shell, so to speak, and find my whatever, be able to express myself.
Just to speak to that a little bit from my part, I was and still am in many ways like very socially awkward.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'd suffer from horrendous, even back then especially, my confidence was very low. And I used to
right,
suffer from horrendous social anxiety, especially if it
right,
was someone that I did admire or look up to. I would seize up. It's been
yeah,
something that I've really, really worked on in my life. But
yeah, cool.
um, yeah, I want to now just, and it is interesting. I want to go forward a little bit to what you were saying around like your style and your aesthetic. I mean, have you ever heard that? I seen a meme recently, and it was like it says, "I'd rather watch Gino push." Have you ever
Yeah,
heard that?
oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and for me, actually, one of my favorite skateboard tricks of all time is Kenny Anderson doing a backside 180 on flat
Oh
ground. I
man,
think it was
dude, love that
in
guy.
the chocolate
Yeah,
chocolate
that
tour
one,
at the
that one.
start.
There's one clip
You know
that
that?
someone put on repeat on YouTube, and that, yeah,
Yeah.
killer. I've watched that
Yeah, I
zillions.
mean, how do you feel about that? Would you rather sometimes see something like that, or do you
Absolutely.
need to see someone doing a friggin' 20-stair handrail?
No, I don't need to see someone doing 20 air at all. Like, much more rather like watch Gino push, like, or cruise around and do something really simple. And I mean, I'm kind of glad, I guess, we came from that generation of being able to get away with that. Like, of doing a 3-trick line that was like a nose slide and a nollie kicky and a manual or something, and just trying to do that really smoothly and well. Whereas now it's like throwing down massively. And I mean, how do you? I mean, full props to guys that make that shit look effortless and good because wow, like it's insane. But yeah, I mean, there was a clip just the other day. Gino put out he's on that new ASICS thing or something, and it's just him pushing around, and it's like, I mean, it's getting a little bit much to be honest. Lately, I'm just like, oh, how often can we just see that him just pushing around, like? But I don't get sick of it. Like I watch it back and yeah, but yeah, for sure. For me, definitely. And I mean, for David and those guys too, we were very much focused on aesthetics of skateboarding. And I'm sure it came across to a lot of people that we were probably, not wankers or whatever, but like we might have taken ourselves too seriously. Or maybe that's how I felt for a while for sure. But I mean, we're just clowns, man. I mean, Sid, like he's an idiot. Like he's got massive like strength in his aesthetics and a real strength in like what he talks about aesthetics all the time. I hear him use that word a lot. And of course, he was such a stylish dude back then, and everyone thought he was like, a god for a while. Like, oh my god, who is this guy? Like, remember he used to get called the Stallion or whatever. And it's like he was so styling, but he didn't. We just were clowns like every other skater. Like we didn't take ourselves that seriously. We just knew what looked good, and it was like, why not? Like, why not make shit look good? Why just like do it for the hell of it?
Let's put it in context though. Like, how old were you in that era? Like, you were
like
mid-20s?
16 to 18. Yeah, like when we were fully cracking it, probably like 19 to 23, something, 20 to 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like got out of it. Oh, like 18 to 22, 23. Sid's a couple of years older than me. We're all a little bit different. Not massively, a couple of years, but I mean, I kind of like stopped skating when I was about 24, like year 2000. I went and moved over to the UK, and I was like, fuck, I'm done with it. I'm over skating. And I went, and then I was just like, wanted to be a designer and an artist, and was like, I'm going. And because I was working on the skate mag for years with Gordo, remember? And like, we had this skate company, like CLS was a skateboard company that we did, but it was basically me. I started it up, and it was my business. I borrowed the money to do it. And I was just like, man, I don't want to run a business. I was kind of like, I was in love with a girl, which was a massive error. And just like stopped, of like giving up everything to think I want to just be with this girl. And just, but to be honest, I wasn't so focused on that. It was just like, I want to be an artist and a designer. And I had an opportunity to go live overseas, and it was just like, that was a strong motivation for me. And I was like running the skateboard business, and I'm not a businessman, and it was shit. I was just like, didn't enjoy that part of it. So I was like, and then working on the skate mag as well, I was surrounded by skateboarding, and I just had enough at that point. So I kind of just bailed out completely, and came back to it a few years later. But don't regret doing it, but it needed to be done at the time. But I was like done at that time.
Just like a burnout type vibe.
Kind of, yeah. For sure.
So where did you grow up, Steve? Where was you?
In the Shire, man, in the Shire, Engadine. Did you know Engadine?
So Sutherland Shire, yeah.
Sutherland Shire, Engadine, Heathcote, like the highway, man. Straight down an hour from the city, like.
So for those of you, because I do have international listeners, it's like the southern suburbs of Sydney.
Yeah. Coastal, like kind of inland from Cronulla, like those beaches. It's that highway that takes you down between the city and Stanwell Park and all that area.
It's a nice zone.
It was awesome to grow up as a kid. Obviously, it was national park. My house basically backed on a national park, man. It was sick. Like, I've spent all my childhood running around in the bush, like commandos kind of stuff, like crazy shit. Like, I've thought about it afterwards, and like, because now I've got a kid. He's only 4, but I must have been like, I couldn't have been that much old. Like, I could have been only 6 or 7 or 8 at the max. Saturday morning, wake up, watch cartoons for a bit, and then just bail the house by myself down into the national park and be playing down there literally by myself. And I don't know if I must have told my mum I was doing that, or I don't know what, but I remember doing it. Like, and then my friends might come down and find me, or I'd just come back, or I'd hang out, go meet up with my other mate later in the day. But I used to play, like, I'm a pretty solitary person, like, so I enjoyed playing by myself a lot, like much more than with other kids. And even now as an adult, like, I prefer being, I'm happy, I'm very comfortable being solitary and on my own, within my own inner voice. Like, I know a lot of people can't handle their inner voice. I kind of, I love it. Like, I kind of get weirded out if I'm surrounded by people too much, and I need some time alone. Yeah.
Interesting.
And that was, as a kid, it was the same.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
It was kind of just like, I've got this like theory on it. And I mean, if I was playing with other kids, because I guess I'm the personality type who's probably a bit of a crowd pleaser in a way of like, okay, if we're going to go do something, and I've got an idea of what I want to do, and you suggest what you want to do, I'm most likely going to be like, okay, let's just do what you want to do. And as a kid, and even as an adult, probably it happens a bit, but as a kid, I remember like, if I was going to go play with these kids, they'd want to go play some game or go play at their house or do something that I didn't necessarily want to do. And then I'd be stuck doing this thing and not want to be there. And so I'll be like, well, I'll just go play by myself. Then I can play the game I want to play the way I want to play it. And so, yeah, I spent a lot of time alone as a kid enjoying myself, like having a great time. Yeah, not being lonely, just being like fucking having a fucking ball in my head.
Really?
Like,
did that? Excuse me, sorry. Did that ever lead to things like maybe ridicule or bullying from other kids because you may have had a bit of a loner vibe?
Yeah, for sure. I was bullied a bit in school, but I don't think any more than anyone else. I mean, I've had friends. Like I'm good at making friends. Like I can be social and I can adapt to like situations and people but I just definitely thrive on, like there's nothing I love more than going and doing something by myself, like going to the beach by myself or whatever, doing something like that. Like, but some of it's like my own personality of like not letting other people influence what's going to happen in the situation. But also, I do enjoy being in my head and thinking about, having those conversations in my head and being alone.
Is that when you get the most creative ideas for art?
For sure, yeah, definitely. And yeah, definitely. I love being in my head, like for sure. Yeah.
How does it translate into parenthood and being married or in a relationship? Can that be detrimental?
It can cause like arguments and issues, like, because I guess in some ways I might not share a lot of my thoughts or feelings. Like I don't think out loud. You know how a lot of people think out loud, and my wife thinks out loud, and it's beautiful. It's cool. Like that's what she is. But for me, it's like I won't say anything until I'm ready to say it. I could have had a whole conversation in my head and resolve that thing without even having to like say it. But it's not even about resolving stuff. It's just like I'm not going to walk into a room and say what I'm thinking without it needing to be a thing that needs to be resolved. It's a personality. Like it can be a massive issue for sure, because it's like, and I don't know where it comes from. It seems like it's caught up in a bit of the previous generation of like men not sharing their feelings. You know what I mean? Like I definitely don't ask for help often, which comes up a lot with my wife for sure, because it's like, I feel like I do a lot of stuff and I don't ask for help with things, even if just basic shit around the house, especially with a kid, you know what I mean? Like I'll just be like, oh, this needs to be done. I'll go up and do it. But I don't get shitty or anything that I have to do it. I'm just like really practical. I'm like, okay, this needs to be done. I got to go up and get up and do it. And I'll do it really quick. And she'll be like, well, you could have asked me and I could have helped, or there might be 10 things to do, you know what I mean? And I'll try and do all of them. It's like shit like that happens a lot, which is weird.
What if something's
I'm trying to get through it? Yeah. What?
Are you trying to get through it?
Yeah, I'm trying to change a bit, especially now since we've got a kid. Like I have to, because it's like we're co-parenting, you know what I mean? And it's like I can't just do everything, which is this type of person I am.
Let's say something's irritating you or you're feeling emotional. Do you express those emotions in your personal relationship or relationships?
Oh, with Ruby I will, for sure. Yeah. I mean, she hears all my shit. It's funny because it's like a lot of my friends think I'm like this super easygoing, super chilled out, nothing ever bothers me guy. And that's true for sure for a lot of things, but they don't see the everyday me. Like, of course I get grumpy. Of course people bother me. Of course things happen that disappoint me. But I'm very good at dealing with things like that. But of course I do. Of course I share with her if like something's happened that day that's like been a drama or for whatever reason like caused an issue. Yeah. I mean, she's probably one of the only people, maybe Davo's seen it, that I don't really realize because we lived together for a long time, but not many people really would see I don't think many people would see me grumpy, like that's for sure. Or like, yeah. And it's funny because she gets the shit. She's like, "Oh, all your friends think you're so fucking chilled out," and then I, and I'm grumpy at home for whatever reason. But I mean, generally it's true. Like for sure, I can handle stress really well. Yeah.
So I don't want to pry too much on your personal relationship, but I am
That's fine.
curious.
Yeah.
Would your wife say that you're a good communicator in your relationship?
She would say yeah, but she would also bring up the same things I brought up for sure. She would
Okay.
just say I should like share the time a bit more. Like I'm very quick to react. Like, but that's my general personality. It's not just that. Like if someone sends me a text message, I'll reply straight away. If someone like it's like you the other day, man, you asked me some stuff, send some photos, and I like, of course I just send them to you. Like, but if I've got time to do something, I'll do it. Like I don't fuck around. Basically, it's less and a lot, and I hear it all the time. You're so flexible, man. You're so like, and sometimes it bothers me myself because I'm like, fuck, I could just take a break and not like be ready to just like help everyone at every minute or whatever. But for sure, dude, I'm like, so if my kid like yells out, I want a yogurt or something, I'll be like, yep, here. And before even she's had a chance to, or you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So that's like a day-to-day thing. But then there's like, yeah, for example, you or someone messaging me, say, oh, hey man, have you got a number of that thing? Or can you help me with this thing? I'll be like, yeah, straight away. Like if I'm not doing anything at that moment, often what happens though with me too is like, if I don't do it in the immediate moment, I will forget about it.
Interesting.
If it's like doing something like that, like I say, sometimes it's like replying to an email. I'm better off just replying because if I leave it 20 minutes, I'm off doing something else and then I'll forget about it. So I'd rather just get shit done quickly and move on to the next thing.
You're a new parent. It's challenging, huh? And
yeah, it is.
Has it made you reflect on your relationship with your own parents?
Oh, massively. Yeah.
In what way?
Thinking obviously about my dad and how he was as a dad, and not trying to like do it better or anything, but for sure, yeah, thinking about situations. But like, it's funny, like memories are hard sometimes. Like, I don't remember. Yeah, lots of times my dad sitting down and like playing with me, like heavily playing, like sitting there, because my kid's like 4 and he's so heavily into Lego right now. And I love it. Like I'll sit down and play Lego with him for hours, man. And like fucking absolutely love it. Oh man, I freaking love it. And it takes me back to me. Like I still kind of live in that head in a way of like when I was his age of like doing that. So I can appreciate what he's doing and I can get into the game.
Your dad would do that with you? Your dad would give you.
That's the memory I don't have. Like of like
interesting.
I don't think he really did. And I don't even because I remember I don't have memories of my dad sitting down and playing with my Star Wars figures with me. He may have done it, but I don't. But I sit there with him for hours. We play together, and he'll either invite me into a game or he'll be like, "Nah, Papa, you just watch. I'm building or whatever, blah blah." But it's like I'm there trying to be, just to whatever. Because sometimes I'm sitting there like watching him play, and I want to play with him. He won't let me in. And it's
interesting. So you're doing it out of a sincere desire to play.
Yeah,
not like an expectation or I should do this to be a good dad.
No, I can't help myself. Yeah,
Rad.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, a lot of dudes.
It's funny because I never had a desire to be a dad. Like I'm a late dad, really, compared to a lot of my friends.
Interesting.
Like I'm 47. I think Davo's got teenage kids, man, and Sid's girls are pretty much older. Well, not older than my kid anyway. But the thing is, my wife now, Ruby, she's almost 10 years younger than me, so it was probably a little bit more based on her age, and because all her friends are having kids now, so it came around a bit like that way. But also, and not that I was against it, but I was like, my sister was very different to me. Like she wanted kids pretty quickly. Like, you could always tell she wanted to be a mom and have that life. And it wasn't something I desired. I knew I'd be a good dad. I was always good, like uncle to my sister's kids and love kids, like love playing with kids. Like, but I wasn't like searching it. I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to be a dad. But now I am a dad. It's like, fuck, I love it. Yeah. Like, mate, unbelievable.
You just totally summed it up for me. It's the exact same.
Yeah,
I was never someone who's like, I want to be a dad, But mate, the second my daughter was born, I was like, actually, sometimes I think I wish I started earlier.
In a way, sometimes I do a bit too, yeah. But I also don't care. I don't dwell on that. I feel like, I'm pretty young at heart for sure, and yeah, there's like, yeah, I do think of that too for sure. But I mean, you do things when you're ready to do them. Shit, life happens as it happens. So that's how I ended up here, and I'm happy where I am.
How does your extended family feel about you raising a child in another country?
They're pretty cool with it for sure. My mom and dad are definitely cool with it. And same with Ruby's family actually. Really, I mean, they obviously miss us and miss seeing him, like his grandparents for sure. But my mom, I've talked to her a little about this, but she like moved out from the UK. Like she met my dad in the UK in the 60s, and she moved to Australia and married him and stayed in Australia. And her family pretty much never came out. Like I don't think her mum ever came to Australia. Her sister might have come early in the days, and I think there was a little bit of like my mum wanting to escape and go do this thing. Like I think that I haven't really fully talked to my mum about it in detail, but I think there was a little bit of like bitterness between her and her sister, which I can't go into because I don't really know if there was or not. But I get the feeling because my mum took us back to the UK, like so I went back with her 3 or 4 times. But so basically, my mum had her kids in Australia her whole life, and I only met my grandparents like 4 times in the UK. You know what I mean? So think about that for those grandparents, and then I think about my mum and Ruby's mum especially. Ruby's mum's on her own, and it's like for sure for her mum it's probably much harder because she's there with Ruby's got a sister with other kids who are close by, but it must be quite painful for her to be like that far from us now. But the thing is like our family's very accustomed to us being away. We've been living overseas for about 12 years or so, and Ruby's a tough person to hold down. So I think everyone was ready for her to like, move around.
Like
I kind
of expected it.
For sure, yeah. They might not have expected it as much from me, but as soon as I started realizing who she was and that she was the type of person who's going to move around the world, because I'm a bit of a homebody for sure. Like I can get my comforts and like be happy with that. It's like, yeah, but she forces me to do stuff that I would probably not have done myself, but would want to do. And so, yeah, we've moved around a lot. Like I thought about recently, like we came back to Australia during the pandemic because Indy was only like 6 months old, and we got a bit freaked out, and fair enough, like we came home, and then we were trapped there for that 2 years, and that was the longest we'd lived in one single house for more than 10 years. Like we've been moving houses pretty much every 6 to 8 months for the last 10 years to a different house, to a different country. It's kind of crazy. We're really good at like setting up a house and making it feel like home pretty quick, but it's pretty insane what the life we've been doing that way.
Actually, I want to get into this. So where is this why has this come about? Is it because your art was taking you over there, or was it Ruby's job?
It's more her. So it's Ruby's work.
So can we go back a little bit then? So when did it all? How did you meet your wife?
We met in Newtown when I was married and got divorced when I was about 24, and that was the girl I was talking about that like I moved over to the UK with. And it was like one of those relationships we just shouldn't have got married. We were together for about 3 years, or like not even, maybe 4 years. And it was all, quick. Yeah. Before I knew it, we were married. And then all of a sudden it was just like, whoa, kind of like not long after that we got married, we were kind of like both over it, I guess. We should have just like been a couple and broken up. It was pretty stupid. So anyway, I was divorced and living in Newtown, and Ruby was actually still living at home at her mum's house, and I was living nearby and had to walk past her house every day. And we just met like locally.
Just in the street?
Yeah, well, we had mutual friends. We actually did have mutual friends, and and we crossed paths. We just ended up meeting in a bar and hooking up. But actually, like we first got together, and she just finished uni, and she was going off on a 4 or 5 month like Latin American trip with her girlfriend, and so we'd only like hooked up or whatever, but it was like she was gone, and so then, but I was already like, well, she's cool, that chick's cool, and then she came back and we got back together, but then a year later from that, part of her uni degree was to go live in Mexico for a year, and so then she went to Mexico for a year, and we kind of like split up, but we were definitely in love with each other. But it was just like, okay, I was just like, okay, this girl is not gonna sit still and just want to live in Australia. Like, her favorite website at the time was like STA Travel, you know what I mean? She was just constantly looking at where she could go next. And so I was like, okay, I need to figure out how I can be with this girl and be able to move around the world like pretty easily. And I had a graphic design. Well, actually at the time I think I was working in publishing, like where the old Skate Mag used to be done. But I was working on a different mag, like a film mag. But I started freelancing, and that got me thinking, okay, if I can be freelancing, I can be anywhere. And I guess kind of we were together for a few years, and she kept traveling. Like, her work is, she works in human rights, and right now she works in her work's amazing. I could talk for hours about her. She's just so insanely, her work is just crazy. So right now she works in advocacy for young women, like globally. Like, she works for foundations and helps raise money, like helps get money out of like big philanthropy organizations and then move it directly to young women in global South countries, but like directly to them. So we're not going through big agencies like the UN or Plan International. Like, she has contacts to move money around. Anyway, her work's insane. But anyway, early in the day, I was like, okay, this is who she is. I need to figure out how I can stay with her and still be me. And so, yeah, freelancing and got me a little bit of more freedom of like not being locked into a job in an office or whatever. And then, so it just kind of went from there. But then we ended up living in Cambodia, and I had to basically kind of give up all my design clients and go move over there to stay, not to stay with her, but I was just like, I'm not going to stop her going. She's clearly like, and to be honest, it was motivating. Like, I was like, fuck, this chick's incredible. Like, she just wants to go live in Cambodia. I'd never been to Cambodia. I was like, yeah, cool, let's go. Like, but she's that kind of inspirational or whatever. And I guess I was that in love with her. It just was like, I'm not gonna, let it go. I'll try and figure out how I can stay with her.
When was this? Like around 2000?
2005. Yeah, 2005. And then we first went to live in Cambodia in 2010 or 11, I think.
Yeah. And so she's doing humanitarian work. How were you surviving, like, financially?
Well, she kind of agreed, like, if you're going to give up all this stuff, but she was working for the UN, so she had, I think her rent was covered, or our rent was covered. And then she was like, look, I'll support you to come over, because it was a 2-year contract. But funnily enough, I don't know if you know, I was like volunteering with Skateboarding over there. So
no, were you?
Yeah. So just before I left, because I was like, what am I going to do? Yeah, I was like, what am I going to do over there? Like, and I'm the kind of person who I have to be doing something. I thought, okay, I could just make art and like get by for sure, and I did that. But when I was like telling a few of my clients, like, because I had a design kind of consultancy or whatever, freelance design thing, and a lot of people at that point didn't know, like, digital nomad, whatever that thing is, wasn't a thing. Like, people, even though I had clients who I never met, never saw, we emailed and they passed me the stuff and I did it and passed it back by email. We're like, oh no, we can't work with you. We're going to be in another country. And which just to me didn't make any sense, because like made no difference. But so I basically gave up all my work and went. But like, amazingly, I don't know, I was doing my research somehow, but I stumbled across like the fact that Skaterstan was just starting up in Cambodia, and I just emailed them and was like, hey, and they knew who I was. Like, one of the guys, like the guy who runs it's Aussie, so he knew me, like, or at least knew who I was, and was like, cool, we're just getting started. Like, there was no real, they'd already done it in Afghanistan, that was up and running. But they were like, yeah, when you come over, come and meet with the country director. He was like a French guy, and just figure it out. And so, yeah, I got there and met up with him, and it was really casual. Like, it was a very, very small operation at that point. It was like this French dude and a local Cambodian guy and a troopy truck, and they would just drive out to middle of nowhere schools and with a bunch of skateboards, like the worst skateboards you've ever seen, and hang out with kids and skate. And it was amazing. It was like massively life changing, obviously, but it was like massively life changing for my skateboarding perspective, because clearly I was from that, like we were talking before, I was from that era of the aesthetic. Everything's perfect. Your board's perfect. We used to like joke, like throw your wheels away when they turn yellow. Or we're riding marble surfaces, and I was going from that to
shoelaces
dirt, skating on dirt, man. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not the type of person who would shy away from that in any way or judge it. I was ready to jump in and take it on. It was amazing. Like, it was super, like, incredibly, and it took me on that trajectory of like where I am now, massively.
What did you learn exactly from that experience? Give me some key learnings.
Well, obviously around like just that world, like that world of like what do you call it? Like, of not philanthropic, but like the world of working in development, I guess, is a whole other world. Like, it's not an industry, but it's like the people are different. The way things are done is different. Like, from a designer's perspective, like the clients I have because I work for the UN a lot now, and it's just like, I don't think a lot of designers could do that type of work. It's like it's just a different way of thinking. So I kind of learned, it's just a whole other world. I don't know how to explain it really, but
or is it because it's based in service work and helping others and building community and things like that? Is that what you?
I guess so. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's selfless. Like, you know what I mean? There's so much, like, everything from where I came from. I was working in advertising in Sydney, man. Like, I was working in an ad agency doing remember 3G phones and that shit? Like, I was designing ads for 3G, basically trying to make a shit phone look really cool so that people who can't afford it could buy it and get stuck with these bills that, like, and I was just like, this is bullshit. And then I go from that to, like, literally helping kids, like, learn how to skate so that then they feel empowered enough to want to go back to school or get a little bit educated or have some motivation in life. It's like, and that was like, clearly that was a huge thing, like, of being able to be a part of that. But I mean, I've always been an empathetic person. It's not like it was like a big life-changing thing in that way of like, oh, whoa, I can help save the world, because I've always kind of at least had that empathy for other people, and aware of my privilege of where I'm from. But it was, I mean, Cambodia, have you been to Cambodia? That place is insane. Like, it was just a life-changing, it was just a learning experience, just having to navigate the streets on a motorbike, or like, all that shit. Like,
that abject poverty that you see.
Yeah, seeing horrific stuff, like, but also seeing obviously beautiful stuff, like, hanging out with those kids. You know what you learn is, like, shit doesn't matter, man. Like, seeing these kids with one shoe and a hole in the other shoe, like a massive hole, literally one shoe, and this kid's skating, and he's got the shoe on the foot that he ollies with so that he can do an ollie. And you're just like, man, this shit does not matter. Like, all that stuff we worry about,
that's something it's something that stands out for me time and time again when I do go to developing countries. Is you see these people with very little, these families and these children with very little, but there just seems like there's this underlying happiness that is kind of different and more pure and more real than maybe what I see in our country at times. Like, just really happy.
Yeah.
And they don't have anything, but they have each other, and they have family, and they have community, and they just have the bare essentials, and that's enough. So
there's a fantastic artist I discovered recently. He's a French guy. I was at the Biennale in Venice last year. I can't remember his name, but he makes these videos where he goes around to developing countries, or at least countries in the global south, that when he films kids playing games that they've invented, like it's their own game. So it's like push a rock up a hill with a stick, or there's this one crazy one in an African country, I can't remember what country, but these kids get inside a big truck tire and they get inside it and they roll down this big hill and then they push it up the hill. And he's filming, the whole thing's an artwork and it's beautiful, but it's just like, these kids are so resilient and able to find creativity in war, like middle of like somewhere crazy, like who knows where, but like they're really cool artworks. And that's kind of where and that's what like it was like working at working at the skater stand. It was just it was Wild West, man. Like it was hilarious. And the dude who ran it, this French guy, he was crazy. It was just like massive eye opener. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Okay, I've got to get involved. This is like, so much fun and so scary and so like, awesome.
So like skateboarding, just for those that are unaware of it, it's kind of more like skateboarding's the catalyst for bringing the community together, empowering them, teaching some new skills, but it's more about, would you say building building community? Is that safe to say?
Building community, but also giving kids like a voice and a motivation, like, because they obviously a lot of their work has ended up being in women and young girls, like they, for a while there, I'm not sure where their stats are at the moment, but there was more girls within skater stand programs and then like girls skating in general or something. Like there was just like a massive amount, and it was just in the countries like Afghanistan where there's now there's like literally zero women's rights. But even then, there was like little to no women's rights. Young girls weren't allowed to take. It was interesting. I mean, Ollie, the guy who did it, talked about this, but he found this loophole with skateboarding because girls in Afghanistan at the time weren't allowed to play sports like football or whatever because of the Taliban rule. But they didn't know what skateboarding was, so it didn't fall under their like rules. So he could a girl could ride a skateboard because they didn't know what it was. I think that's the kind of basics of the story of how he got it going and how he got girls in, But then it was just about getting people in Cambodia for sure. There's so many kids living on the street and living in rubbish dumps and working, and their parents have got them out there working, or they're not even orphans. Like there's a falsehood in Cambodia that all these kids are orphans, but they've often got parents, but they get put out into the street to earn money, and then the money gets brought back, but not necessarily to their own family. But it was about getting kids off the street, giving them something to do, and then once they're off the street and in this place where we could hang out and skate and talk to them and they could be with other kids, then you could introduce some education and start, and that's how, and then it's grown, and he's got a great business plan now, obviously, but when I was there, it was pretty raw, man. We just show up to the school and have 10 skateboards and try and see these kids push around, and it's hilarious. So awesome.
So where did you just go from Cambodia? What was the next step from there?
Straight to Mexico. Yeah, like she finished up this 2-year contract, and we came home. And I guess by that stage, she was talking about she was already in love with Mexico, and I was pretty sure she wanted to go that direction. I hadn't been there. We went there on a holiday together in 2010, which was just before we went to Cambodia. And she was already familiar with the country, so she was kind of showing me around. And I was like, this place is awesome. We came to Oaxaca City for like 3 days, where we are now. And I guess in my head, I was thinking, okay, in the future, we might end up living somewhere like Mexico, and all the places we're going. I was trying to think about where would be cool. And this place, I was only here for a couple of days, and I was like, I could see there was an art everywhere. There was an art scene, a cool kind of like creative scene, and it stayed with me. And I was like, oh, that place was awesome. And but then after Cambodia, I actually did an artist residency in Mexico on purpose to come here by myself, so that I could see if I liked it by myself, or if I could find my own place here, rather than just be following her trajectory, if you know what I mean. So it was like, okay, can I exist here and have my own life here? And it turned out that I could. But that was only like a 6-week residency or something, but it gave me a chance to like find myself here first, and so then we came back to Australia. And actually, funnily enough, she was applying for jobs to try and get herself over here, and I applied for a job at the same artist residency that I did the residency, and they just opened up a new residency in Oaxaca, and I got the job. And I came over before her, so she had a job back in Sydney that she couldn't really get out of. And so I came by myself, and I was actually here for about 8 months, and that was tough because honestly, the job itself on paper and actually day to day was the best thing I've ever done. It was amazing. It was so fun. I was managing this space. I had a house in the middle of the city. Foreigners like Europeans and Americans and Australians, whoever, from not Mexican, or could be Mexican, but mostly Americans and Europeans, could apply to do like a 6-week course, like what I did. And you come in and you learn weaving, or you learn ceramics, or you learn natural print dyes, like generally things that local artists. And I was the middleman, so I was like, manage the space, make sure they had their food, made sure they had all the stuff, and then also made sure they had an artist to work with to help them, made sure they got their project going. So I was just living in this house and had an art studio there. I was making my art, and I was just surrounded by artists, and I was learning Spanish, and I was really quickly inserted into the local art scene. It was like a really, really amazing way to just instantly be in the scene, because I literally was working with all the best artists in the city, knowing them, paying them to come and help, like teach art to these foreigners. But so the job was amazing, but the people I was working for were absolute pricks, like the most horrible people I've ever met in my life.
Really?
And it was so tough. Yeah, and I don't like
Mexicans.
There's not many people I hate in the world, and like I hated them. I was writing emails back to people.
Like tyrants?
Dude, they were tyrants. They were racist. They were like, because there's this thing, right? So they're from Puebla, which is a city north of here. Oaxaca's like a bit of there's a massive indigenous community here. It's the biggest indigenous population in the country. People are very racist towards Oaxaca in general, but especially people from Puebla, because it's like it's just a known conflict, and these people were exceptionally just horrible. They were just horrible people, man. Like everything I heard them talk about. But the funny thing was, like, not even funny, sad thing. They hated artists. Like they hated running a hospitality thing. So it was like anytime any artist came, they bitched to me about the artist who came. They had very strict rules about the space. And I was just like, I'm an artist, so I know what an artist needs. Like they want to make a mess and they want to do their thing. They want to go out in the street and meet someone. They're like, don't let them, go out partying or whatever. And I was like, I was out going out partying, so I was like taking them with me. And like, so it was tough. It was a really tough job. And of course I was away from Ruby like 8 months, and it was so hard. And man, I've never had a blow up really with anyone. And we had, at one point, they were micromanaging me till it was like hurting. And we had this Skype call one day, and they brought up something with me, and I just was like clicked. I was saying earlier, usually I'd be the one who wouldn't say things, and I probably had been holding a lot of stuff in for a while, but I just let it out, and I fully went off at them. And
in English or Spanish?
Probably in English. My Spanish is probably just getting there within then.
Just curious.
And
I'd love to see you going off see you go off in Spanish.
Yeah. And man, it was something I'd never done before. Really, I avoid conflict for sure, but I just couldn't help it at this point. I was just like, I was so offended and so micromanaged, and so just felt so belittled, and they were just horrible people. And I was just like, fuck you guys, I'm out. Like I quit, and my contract still had another whatever, not that long, but probably 4 or 5 months in it. But the reason I felt I could do that was because I knew Ruby was coming. She had a job. She was coming pretty soon. And it's pretty funny actually, because I was working at this place, and the other thing, they was like, they wouldn't let her come and live with me. They were like, oh, she'll distract you from your work. You can't have. It was just like insanity. It was
control.
Insane control freaks, massive control freaks.
Dude.
Anyway, the story's rambling a bit, but basically, it was really funny because she was about to fly over to start her new job there, and I'd already had another apartment that she was going to live in, so we were going to be living separately. It was a joke. It was so ridiculous, and I don't know how we we're going to manage it, but I just was like, I quit the fucking job. I was like, and then I messaged her straight after. I was like, hey, when you get here, I'll come and live with you. Like, I'm out. And so then I had to start again from scratch, I guess. But yeah, it was fucking,
what was the fallout of that confrontation in the end?
Never heard from. I've seen them. I saw them around the streets a bit. It was like dude, I won't go too much into it, but they had issues with other people that had worked there before. I found out later, and people and even residents like came to me directly and gave me feedback saying like they felt uncomfortable there and stuff. But funnily enough, for a small town, and they're still here, they still run the residency, but they live in Puebla, so they're not here very often. Haven't seen them. Hey, I saw them a couple times in the street or in a bar and just like ignored them, brushed them off. Felt like I wanted to go up and just tell them to fuck off, but I probably wouldn't. But I guess, the best revenge for me was just like thriving here. Like every time I do an exhibition now here, I'm kind of like in the back of my head think, fuck, I hope they saw that that's happening, or I hope it'd be funny if they showed up, because it's like, fuck you guys, I stayed and I survived and didn't need you, kind of thing.
Wow.
Like, it stayed with me. Like, it was a horrible, horrible experience. It's one of the only things where it's like it stayed with me strongly, like of how horrible that time was.
Do you mind if I ask how you feel post-confrontation? So you said you don't go off at people very often, but in that instance, like, how do you feel? Do you go into like this weird guilt or shame or remorse over it?
Nah, I move on from stuff pretty quick. Like I remember at the time I went out and just partied with my mates for sure. We had a massive night. It was a massive bloke bender, and I remember I must have just been releasing all this like pent up like frustration or whatever. Like, and I remember it was just like an absolute blinder. It was like horrific, really. But then after that, I just I dealt with it. I talked to people Ruby knows all about it, and my family I've talked to. Like, there was a bunch of friends back in Australia I was emailing regularly, Ruby's sister, and just to get like some, because I was away from home and I felt really alone, you know what I mean? And I was just like, these people were just drilling me, like, and I was and I was in a new place with new friends in a language like I was learning. So afterwards, like I was saying, I kind of just tried to move on. Like, I just was like, fuck it, I'm going to go and be myself, be my own artist, and just exist here and do it. And I'm pretty good at like, there's probably a part of me that maybe not bottles up like the stuff, because I definitely deal with it. Like, I'm good at managing problems and stress in my head and letting it rise up and dealing. Like, my dad was this is a whole other story, but my dad was a psychologist, and like, I grew up doing meditation my whole life, and he used hypnotherapy as his thing. And I learned meditation from my dad from as early as I can remember. When I was like, he used to take me to classes when I was like 6, and I would lie there on the floor while he meditated. So I've got a very good way of like letting things rise, thinking about them, dealing with them as best I can, and then trying to like let it go and move on. Like, it's definitely, like, I don't think even that thing now, like, I talk about it now and I probably sound a bit worked up because it was emotional, man. It was like a horrible experience, but I haven't had any really other experiences like that. I've been divorced, and like that woman is a great person. I have no hard feelings against her. And there's other people who have done shit by me, but that situation was just like nothing I've ever dealt with in my life.
You must have felt so isolated, being in another country, dealing with that. It would have been a horrible feeling.
For sure. And the fact that I'm still here, I could have like obviously been so traumatized by that experience that I would never want to live here, but I do. This place is amazing. I can see all the beauty in that. And they are not from here, you know what I mean? So I was like, fuck them. You guys aren't from here. Like, I was much more involved in the scene than they were. They were scared. They used to tell me like, anyway, I won't keep talking about it. It was like a horrible experience.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with Mexico, and I have been to Oaxaca, it's an amazing place, and to this day was one of the best experiences of my life. Like the people, the food, the culture, uh, really captivated me. And it's the only other country, like Mexico, I feel this weird affinity with. And then I also feel when I'm in Indonesia for some reason,
Mm,
the people,
yeah.
the
Yeah, you've lived
culture.
in Bali, right, for a while.
Yeah, yeah. And but what I did remember about Mexico, there was this element of like it was still a little bit Wild West. It could be quite dangerous. Uh,
Yeah, definitely.
is that feeling still there in Mexico? Is there an
Yeah,
element of danger present?
for sure. Yeah. Well, Oaxaca's as safe as you can possibly get, really, in
Yeah,
Oaxaca, in Mexico. So that's probably partly why we're here. It feels safe. There's, yeah, most of the danger we would face personally is just like basic street crime, like someone stealing your phone off you or trying mugging you or something. Um, but no, man, like it's a horrible place if you're. I'm so yeah glad I'm not a 16-year-old female Mexican girl because they are just disappearing like
still.
every once a week. Oh man, even and this Oaxaca's like one of the mellowest cities, but every other week I get sent on a Facebook message or an Instagram thing. People post on their stories a photo of a girl missing, last seen walking down the main street, over, and it happens here for sure. So for us as like foreigners, we're not massive targets for anything else except
Theft.
like yeah, quick thefts or muggings, really.
Gee,
But yeah, for sure, I'm hyper aware of the danger, like of what the yeah, especially Ruby is working in that area of like trying to end violence against women, and we're living in a country that's one of the most violent countries against women, and so
can can you explain that? Like, I still struggle to understand. Like, I know it's occurring, but I just still don't understand why. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't either
what's
too,
it?
but it's just like they're
Maybe
just worthless people. They don't see that like these people. It's just horrific. Like they don't, and it's so much sadder because the justice system doesn't see any worth in them either. Like it's so horrifically sad. It's full on, man. Yeah, there was a
I
crazy
just
story here in the news recently. Like a girl, there was like in Mexico City. I guess some people lived close to a rubbish dump, and they could hear screaming, and they went out to the rubbish dump, and they found a girl wrapped up in a plastic bag, and they brought her in to the police and they interviewed her and stuff, and they talked to her, and she was like, yeah, I was in a place with like there was at least 30 other women in this place, and I don't know what happened to them, I don't know where I was. And it's like this girl survived, luckily, it's like somehow, but like imagine like where's the other 30 women, and they just disappear. Like it happens all the time, man. It's horrific.
that's where
And
I
then there's
get
no
really
justice.
confused. Yeah, I'm just really confused about the motivation. Is it all sex crime? Is it all based in sex
uh
crime?
no, I mean it's like power, it's power stuff for sure. It's cartels running everything. It's I don't. I mean, I'm not an expert on it for sure, but I don't think it's as much about like for sure young, um, whatever, like prostitutes or whatever, or sex workers are disappearing. But it's not just that. Like it's nothing. It's not about that. It's about a power over women and over people in general. But obviously, women are the minority in a place like
Or
Mexico
is it
where it's so it's the machismo, you know, um,
machismo? Is that like the
yeah,
patriarchy?
it's like the patriarchy. It's just like men rule and they don't give a fuck. Yeah.
And they
And
want to make
it's changing for
examples?
sure. Mexico's changed a lot, even in the 10 years I've been here for sure. But on a general, yeah, day to day, man, girls are just disappearing. But people are disappearing. Journalists disappear. Anyone who like speaks out against stuff, that's pretty risky. But the girl thing, it's just horrible. It's no. I don't think there's any motivation except to just yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it's
Mm,
horrific.
it's not in the media in Australia that often.
No, I mean, yeah, it's funny because it's like I reckon a lot of people were scared to come to Mexico for a long time, and I think the media around Mexico has changed a lot, and for good reason in a way. Like, man, you can come. You've been to Mexico, you know what I mean? Like, you can come to Mexico and be here, and it's like you can easily not get killed. It's weird to say that, but it's like you're not facing that shit every day unless you do something stupid and get involved in something. Like, a couple of guys got killed recently near Puerto Escondido, like foreigners, Argentinian guys, and I heard about it, and that doesn't happen very often. Foreigners don't get killed that often, but it was because one of the guys had slept with the girlfriend of a drug dealer, and it's like, of course, in our world, that's fucking heavy, but here, dude, that's an instant. You're gone. Like, I'm not going to think about that twice. Like, you're gone. Yeah. So,
And
you just don't mess around. Like, that's it. You just don't mess around here. Like, I would.
Can you feel the presence of the cartels though?
Not in Oaxaca. Hey, not so much. Yeah. Okay. You don't really see that stuff.
Feel it.
Nah, you don't feel it as much here.
Is it just like you hear stories and people talking about stuff?
I mean, I've seen bodies and stuff, but I never know whether it's like from something like that or just like a hit and run or something. Like, like a body on the side of the road or something. But it's like, it could be something gnarlier or
wild. So wild.
Yeah,
you're living wild life. Do you
it seems like I've got a 4-year-old kid. My day-to-day life is probably not that much different to yours, bro. It's like I go drop him off at daycare, go to the fucking supermarket, buy all the shit for the house, come home, do some work, play Lego, go out for dinner maybe. It's like, it's pretty, our life's pretty normal these days.
I mean, do you enjoy some of the benefits of being a foreigner in I don't know if Mexico is a developing country. You know, like things like, I know we used to enjoy, we had a nanny and we had a housekeeper. You know, these are things that you can't really afford in Australia. Do you enjoy those sort of things?
Yeah, and we enjoy it. And for us, it's for sure. Like, we have a nanny that can help us, but it's just as much for us about helping give someone a job here. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to live as a part of the community as we can possibly live, because so many people just come here and just don't. We're trying to live ethically. You know what I mean? So we support local businesses. I'm supporting all my friends. I work with local artists. I'm trying to, and of course, we hire a nanny, but it's just like, it's not just as much. We need it for sure. It helps, but we're giving that woman a job, and we're aware of that. And we have a cleaner that comes once a month, and we wouldn't have that in Australia, but that woman gets, $50 for that or whatever. But it's such a different life here. Like, like in Bali is probably similar. Like, it's a service industry. You know what I mean? Like, the people there's someone who will be able to do anything for you at any time to get so they can get some money. And if I can do that as a person of extreme privilege in where I'm from and who I can be, if I can support that in any way I can, that's what I would do for sure.
Do you get tired of being treated like a wealthy gringo type vibe? Yeah, does that ever happen?
Yeah, I don't get tired. Like, it doesn't happen that often, to be honest. Like, my friends, like, for sure, like with people who maybe don't know me. I mean, you get like shit like that's, if I get in a taxi sometimes and I'm going home from the city to home, and the taxi driver adds like 20 pesos to the drive because he thinks I've just arrived from the US, and I'm just like, no, dude, like, I do this every day. Like, it's 60 pesos, it's not 80. And sometimes I'm just like, whatever, I don't care, I'll just give it to him because he thinks, and because of course to him I do look like a gringo, and I do have the 80 pesos, but that doesn't help anyone by doing that either, like by giving that money over, because then it's like, it's pushing up costs of living. Like, we're, there's a massive thing here now with like, and it's happening all over the world, obviously, like Airbnb's just destroyed Oaxaca massively and Mexico hugely, because it's anyone who owns a property here now realized they can bump their rent up and get a foreigner in, and then Mexicans can't afford to get housing in the middle of the city where they could before. And of course I'm aware that I'm, in some way a part of that. Like, I've done my absolute best to live here as ethically and as like, yeah, as part of the community as I possibly can. But of course, like, yeah, being in a country like there's got to be, I've got to have played some role in that somehow. I'm just trying to be aware of my privilege and redisperse it, as much as I possibly can and support people how I can. But it's
Yeah,
tough.
man.
Like, you can get guilty about it for sure. You feel weird sometimes, but at the same time, I talk to my friends and they respect me big time. Like
Look at that. White privilege.
Yeah, for sure. White guilt, you know what I mean? Yeah.
It's real. It's real as an expat.
It's real, dude. It's real. Yeah.
As an
All you can
expat.
do is try and be an ally and there's ways to do it. It's ways to live.
And I think you use the word conscious, like just being conscious.
That's the first step. Be aware of your privilege. Like, the first step is I mean, like, a crazy example was after the pandemic, and I don't want to get in a big discussion about masks and shit, but just quickly, it was just like, we came back after the pandemic, or not after, but like whatever, when we could leave Australia in March last year. And I guess Australia was kind of getting over it, and we were all a bit over the mask thing. And we landed in Mexico, and we had masks, of course, because we're flying, and just because we were conscious of it. But we arrived and we got here, and everyone was wearing masks, like walking down the street, every single person outside, like everyone had masks on all the time, constantly. But then you would see foreigners, like white people with no mask, walking around, and they would stand out like you've never seen white people stand out. Like, so I was just like, immediately, I'm like, well, I can see that it's kind of ridiculous to wear a mask outside at 35 degrees. Yeah. And it's not really going to do that much. But respect to the people, because they're scared and they're dealing with this shit like real. I wore a mask like everywhere, and people stop wearing them a little bit now for sure, but people still wear them. I wear it on a bus if I get on a bus, but like, it's just about respect of the place you're in. Like, respect the culture. Like, don't bring your shit in. And it was just, anyway, that was just something I talked to my friends about it, and everyone was super pissed. Like, they were just like, look at these gringos. Like, and they were just flying in from the US and not wearing masks and just cruising around like fucking whatever. And I mean, sure, whatever, everyone's got their opinions on masks or whatever, but it was not about that. It wasn't about that. It was about respecting where you are. Like, have some respect.
I'm a foreigner. This is what the locals are doing. Doesn't align with my ethics, but I want to respect them. I get it. I get it. Yeah. Look, I want to move on. I want to hear. I want to hear about your art journey. So going back to your early days, so post high school and dabbling with graphic design and then studying graphic design.
Yeah.
How did it evolve from back then? Back when you were helping some of those skate companies design things and working for Skateboarding Australia, as you worked there as a graphic designer, correct? Yeah. So how did the evolution come about from there? Like, when did you start dabbling with actual, your own mediums?
My own stuff. I mean, in terms of the art making, like whatever, in terms of like this kind of stuff, I was always doing that, like for sure, making art and making art journals and creating art. And I'd kind of like wanting to be an artist, but I got into design and I enjoyed it. And especially because of the skateboard graphic side of things, like I fucking love designing skateboard graphics.
Skate graphics, man.
It was awesome, like, to be able to do that. And so, I mean, I graduated college in like 97 and went straight into working for a design studio in Balmain, which was like a little 5-person information, like they called themselves information designers. So it was pretty like dry work. It wasn't like necessarily like whatever super flashy creative stuff. It was a lot of reports and a lot of like heavy tech stuff. Yeah. But finally, it was suited me, man, because I'm pretty like I don't know. I like that. I don't know if I'm how to describe it, but it worked for me. That job worked for me. It taught me about appreciating how to use text and how to make things, readable, and it's what I still do now. So it definitely led me to here. But then because I was straight out of college and I was still skating, like I still had boards and on me. It was actually like 97, 98 was like our peak for sure of like skate ability and skate and the industry in Australia for us.
And we started, like what, CLS?
Oh, yeah, that crew, Sydney crew, me, like all of us, like you were there, man. Like Jules, Time Skateboards, all the boys, like, you know, Time, Glenn Scott, Criminal, CLS, me and those guys. Like, I feel like 97, 98 was a massive couple of years, I reckon. It might be different for others, but that for me, it felt like we were skating a lot and at the best we could. And I guess we were connecting with internationals a lot more. Like Emilio was working at Slap, so felt like there was a pretty, a bit of a more of a crossover between us and the US skaters, and in a way of like just hanging out. And like a lot of guys were coming out here and hanging. Like remember Keith Huffnagel and those guys came and were here for extended periods, and and we were just skating with them. Like it was like, and a bunch of and it wasn't like, it didn't feel like we were that far. Of course, I don't compare myself to fucking Huffnagel in any way, but it was like I didn't feel like we couldn't skate with them. Like it didn't feel like they were so much above us. It was more like, hey, we're all just cruising, and it was like that was awesome time for that. But
just want to divert a little bit. You skated for Time Skateboards, yeah?
No, I just did graphics for him.
You did graphics for him. So
yeah.
when did class happen after Time or at the same time?
About the same time? No. They were still going.
CLS.
We stole Sid off
That's
Time.
what I thought, because did Sid quit Time for CLS?
Yeah,
that's right. I remember now.
It's funny.
That's so
and
right.
was like, I guess at the time, I mean, we were all friends. It was super funny, but it was friendly competition. You know what I mean? But yeah, for sure, we were skating. I was skating for Omni for that whole time, and then because I was studying design, and we were fucking around with the class name and CLS and all this stuff. And I came up with a logo. Me and Davo sprayed it on our board a bunch, and then I was like, man, let's just do a board company. And Davo was only skating for like Koala or something, like a distributor. And but Sid was on. The big one was probably Sid quitting Time because you know he was a big name for them at the time. And but it was more. It wasn't like we're all still. I don't know. It was just, we're all the same thing. We're all skating together. It didn't feel like a massive thing. But yeah, I was art directing all that stuff, all Time stuff, and then doing my stuff, and then doing Criminal stuff. But it was mostly because I just knew how to create graphics to get ready for print. You know what I mean? I wasn't necessarily doing a lot of all the artwork. They were just, you know, Marty Baptist and Paul Brabenek and all those guys created graphics, but I would get given the artwork and then have to scan it in and be able to process it or like, you know, break it down so it could be screen printed and shit like that. But in terms of the art trajectory, so I was like doing all that shit the whole time, working in the design studio, but I had an opportunity to go over to the US with Sid in like 98. And I quit the design job with the intention of going for a few months. Not the intention of like going over there and making it or anything. Phil Mackey was living over there, and we went and crashed on his couch for a couple of months and like just skated and filmed heaps. And it was cool. It was awesome. But I was always going home. I probably had a return flight, but and I was living with Davo back in Sydney. So when I came back, I didn't have a job. And I was living with Davo, and he was working at the STS warehouse, like packing boxes or whatever. And I ended up getting a job there for a while. And not long after that, I guess somehow, well, we were friends with Gordo, but the design job came up at the Skate Mag. And so I applied for it. And yeah, I mean, of course, like being a skater and designer, it was probably like, whatever. I don't want to sound like a dick, but I probably was top. There wouldn't have been that many other designers who knew as much about the skating industry that could have probably got that job. I don't know. Anyway, I got the job, and it was amazing. It was so sick, like as a skater. But I felt a bit weird about it. I remember talking to Gordo about me not appearing in the mag so much, and I was totally cool with it because I felt weird about it. So I don't think I actually had a photo published in Australian Skateboarding. Maybe a couple here and there, but like I tried not to. Except ads, like obviously I was like Converse were putting ads in and stuff and Quicksilver, but I was pretty conscious about not trying to be in the mag too much. I didn't want to So I backed away from that. I felt weird about it, like working on a mag.
Okay.
I just felt like how easy it would be for me to put a photo of myself in the mag. You know what I mean?
Like a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people need to remember this is pre-social media, so exposure in a magazine was so like important and revered. So
yeah, for sure, it was how you got your extra money. You know, if you got photo incentive, if you got any cash at all, it was like if you could somehow boost an ollie with the big globe sticker visible. You know, it's like, and then you might get some money off globe or whatever. Like, so yeah, it was how you'd get paid, and for sure it was. But yeah, I mean, but I was at that point, I was probably starting to lean more towards wanting to become a designer, and I was like less focused on, thinking I was ever going to be like a pro skater for life kind of thing. So that was awesome. I was there for a few years with Gordo, and then, but then, in 2000, I left to go overseas to, it's like just that classic thing of living in the UK. I had a UK, from my grandparents' heritage thing, like I could go get a visa there. And we lived there for a year, and I freelanced over there on different magazines, and it was inspirational for me. It was just nice to like break away from the skateboarding world and not be a skater and not be known, just thought of as a skater. You know what I mean? Like in Australia, I felt like people knew me as a skater before a designer, and I probably wanted to try and be known as a designer a bit more or whatever. I don't know. I was just trying to pursue a career, I guess. And so that was cool. I did that. And then when I came back, worked on more magazines. I was really into designing magazines. I was good at it and enjoyed it, and worked on a bunch of different publishing companies. And then went into a bit of a dark period because I was going through this divorce and our relationship breaking down. And I was, pretty depressed around 2003. Had a job on this motorbike mag, which I didn't enjoy. It was a pretty shit. I don't know. I don't fucking care about motorbikes at all.
Random.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think, I don't know how I ended up on it, but I probably just needed, totally forgetting a whole important piece. So I worked at Juice Clothing. Like, Guy Miller started up Illume.
You worked for Juice?
Yeah. And that was huge. Like, so remember Guy started up that thing called Illume for Davo?
Yeah,
it was a brand called Illume Clothing. It was kind of like Davo's thing. And in 2001-ish, I quit working in magazines to go work with Guy because he needed help. I guess Juice was blowing up, and I was just basically the art director for Illume, and he was doing all things Juice. And I was there for a couple of years in the Juice offices with him and Ty and all those guys. Well, when Ty was there, Davo would come in and we'd fuck around and come up with stupid ideas for ads and like. So that was cool. That was a really different experience for me because I'd come from designing magazines and paper, books and materials, to now designing fashion, like clothes, which is whatever. Obviously, we're just getting t-shirts and jeans and like putting prints on them.
So you were designing the prints?
Yeah, I was doing the graphics, like drawing graphics to go on t-shirts, like logo-based graphics and stuff like that. But we tried to make Illume a little bit more fashionable kind of vibe or whatever. Like Juice was very core skate and Illume was core skate in a way, but it was also like my chance to add a little bit of artistic flair, I guess. And there's definitely a few items on the catalogue that Davo would never have worn that Sid would have definitely gotten into, if you know what I mean. Like, so it was like, yeah. But that was awesome. That was fucking fantastic. But I was kind of there at the time when Juice was starting to. I've listened to Miller's podcast when he talks about when they had that year where they lost Guy Miller.
Yeah,
I listened to his podcast when he talks about when they had that year when they lost massive amount of money. I was kind of there
$600,000
when that was happening. Yeah, because they blew up, man. It was massive. They were doing ads in Trans World. Yeah. He was going to the US. They were sponsoring. Yeah, it was like fucking huge. And then literally like the next year, I was very conscious of the stress levels. I could see Richard and Guy and like the stress that was happening over the business. And it was just like, and I could see, and things were changing in terms, like I know guys talked about it too, like the fashion industry kind of, like it's when Subi and all that stuff happened and people, the probably juice was like obviously selling to core skaters, but it was definitely selling to like a broader audience because obviously how else could you make the money they were making? But then when the fashion changed and everyone started buying Subi and buying like all these other brands, then juice was probably only going to get core skaters, I get. And Illume was like trying to be a bit of both. And anyway, so at some point it was pretty obvious to me that, Illume probably wasn't going to carry on. And so I gracefully like left Illume and moved back into designing magazines and then carried on. But the whole time I was doing exhibitions and creating my art on the side and that was important to me as well. And obviously doing graphics for boards and all that shit, but it all crossed over. But now I'm jumping forwards, but I have a design consultancy that I run from here, and I have clients. Yeah, so that's how I pay my bills. You know what I mean? Like I do exhibitions. My art's successful, and I don't think I could fully live off it. I had a great year last year, sold a lot of artwork, but and I do a lot of my artwork for some of my clients. Like it's like commissioning stuff or like.
So you do commission work?
Yeah, for sure. But none of my clients, all my clients are like within the world of not-for-profit, or I don't do any commercial work whatsoever. I only work in, so my main client is like a UN agency called UN Women, and then I work for a union in the UK. I do a lot of work for them. They're basically my kind of bread and butter.
Well, what kind of stuff do they ask you to do when they ask for commission jobs?
Infographics, reports.
Infographics.
It's like a 150-page report on some research on violence against women, rates of violence against women in Asia Pacific, and I'll design the report and make graphics that help
present the data.
You digest it and present the data. I'm really good at that, and I enjoy it, and it's like pretty easy for me to make money doing that. Like,
rad.
So that's what I'm doing day to day.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an easy way for me. I do fully enjoy it. Like, it feels important to me to be able to use my design skills in that way or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't fully live off my art. It's probably, I couldn't fully live off it, but it's like, I treat myself and my art as a kind of a client. So I do work on my art a lot, and I have exhibitions quite regularly, and it's important to me massively. Like, and it's all I put on my Instagram. I don't put any of my design stuff out there because I don't really need to. And I don't feel like I have a very different opinion of being a designer than probably a lot of designers do, but also because it's not who I am. I put myself into my artwork, but if I'm designing something for a client, I see myself as a way of being a voice for their kind of cause or campaign or who they are. And I'm a way of getting what's in their head out and visually onto a piece of paper. And so I don't feel like it's mine in a way. I'm happy to be in a way of a service to get their thing out there, because most of my stuff's campaign based, and it's like, I'm not going to be putting stuff up saying, oh, hey, I'm so proud of this design I did around, young girls, child marriage in Nigeria or something. It's like, what am I bragging about? Like, I should be it's like the work should be about the girls. You know what I mean? Like, I don't focus on telling anyone that much. Like, I don't advertise it, but I need to advertise my art because I'm trying to sell my art. I'm trying to like create a brand in a way. So that's important. Whereas my design stuff just carries on, but it's important to me, and it's hugely important, but I don't feel the need to like,
where are most of your sales occurring for your artwork?
Maybe in Mexico, man.
But is it happening when you do an art show? Or is it happening via your website? Is it happening through your Instagram?
No, mostly exhibitions, and then after the fact. Like, so if I do a show and I sell a few works, then there's a gallery here in Oaxaca that sells my work, so they sell stuff pretty regularly. But yeah, mostly through exhibitions.
Describe the feeling you get when you sell an original piece.
it's, yeah, I mean, it's an amazing feeling. It's funny because it's like, I feel like once I make an artwork and I put it on the wall, it's like a super personal piece of artwork, but once it's on the wall, it's like not mine anymore. And I'm happy for people to buy it and make it theirs and interpret it however they want. So I don't feel too much ownership over it. It's like I'm really happy when someone sees an artwork and sees something in it that they can relate to, or for whatever reason want to buy it. That's like, it makes me feel pretty amazing when someone's like resonated with my work in some way.
Yeah.
But what I find frustrating is that often I might not meet the person, and I'd love to hear what a lot of the time why it resonates with them or what they saw in it, because a lot of the work I do is pretty personal, self-reflective. Like again, like I was saying before, like I spend a lot of time in my head and I'm making all this artwork, and it's like very much something like a thought process that's going through. And then when I do put it up, it's sort of interpretation, but it's still something that it was a process that I went through. Yeah. I'm interested when people do have an opinion or give their kind of like feedback on it, but I often don't hear it, that's a bit like frustrating. I'd love to know why they loved it or what they saw in it, or if they just thought it was pretty and they just bought it, or
they might feel like it works for a space or something. But in regards to your process, like at what point do you know a piece is finished? Like when are you ready to let go? Like
I'm pretty good at doing that these days.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Go.
Oh, because I was even struggling with it myself yesterday. I was actually designing your thumbnail for your episode.
Yeah, right.
And I was just doing something with this design program. You'll see it. Hopefully you like it.
Yeah, cool.
But I mean, it looked good. And then I'm like, I just want to fix this. And then I fixed it too much. I overfixed it. Okay, I'm going to change it again. And then I put it down, and then I came back to it, and then I played with it, and I just couldn't let it go.
Yeah,
do you ever struggle? Do you struggle with that?
No, I'm really good at making decisions, and like, it's just how I am. Pretty practical. I'm I don't know, like it's not that easy, but it's like I've learned how to do it, and I'm pretty I'm good at making a decision on something and saying, okay, that's done. And I might think later, maybe I don't like that much. Maybe I should have done this. But then I don't dwell on that. I'll be like, and often like even if I create an artwork that I might not be that happy with, I've learned to still hang that work on a wall because someone else might see something in it that I didn't see. It's happened heaps, man. I remember the first time it ever happened. Like I did a show back in 2013 back in Sydney, and there was one collage in it that I didn't really like it, and I hung it on the wall, and it was the first one to sell, and I was just like, whoa, okay, that's a trippy. And so then someone liked it. So now, often if I do make a work that I feel is like it's happened in the same process of all the other ones, but I personally might not think it's resonated with me for whatever reason, or I might think something's off about it. Someone else will see something in it, and it might, that's cool with me. Like,
trips me out. I definitely don't consider what I do as art at all. But what I have learned over the years is there's been episodes I've recorded and I've gone like at the end of the episode, I've thought to myself, oh, that was so shit, and like I asked shit questions, and I'm sorry the guest wasn't that great. And then but I publish it, sticking to my weekly schedule, and it never ceases to amaze me. People reach out, go, that was epic, or that person said something I really needed to hear, and it was spot on. So thanks for doing it. I'm just like, oh my God, wow, really?
Yeah, it's funny.
So
right?
just to speak to what
you never know. Yeah,
just to speak to what you were saying. It's bizarre, isn't it?
Same feeling. Yeah, it's totally bizarre.
Yeah. So
you
don't get anxiety about that though when you produce something that you're not personally satisfied with?
Not like long-lasting anxiety. Like I get anxiety for a second, and then I'm like, oh, I can move past it. Yeah, for sure, but not enough to like make me not put it up. I'll be able to kind of almost ignore it. I'll be like, okay, that's there, and not concentrate. But I'll be waiting to see, and it's happened a bunch of times, man. Like the thing will sell, and I mean, I'm like happy that person's got it for that whatever reason, but I'll still be kind of like, oh, I don't like that work, but cool. I'm happy they're into it for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting, man. So,
yeah.
why collage?
For me, it's like, and probably comes back to a bit of practicality of like my who I am, and if it comes back to maybe my design aesthetic, like I can paint and draw, and I used to draw a lot. And but I get a bit. I like to work fast, and I yeah, I find I've never really worked with like oils and stuff, and I don't know if I could because like such seems like such a long process. If like, because I can, even if I don't finish a collage really quickly, like it might take a couple of weeks to do, but I'll be cutting stuff up and like put it all down and not stick it or not like finalize it, but I can get to a place where I'm pretty happy with whatever thoughts are going in my head of what I want to achieve with this artwork, and and move things around quickly and make decisions, change things quickly. So it's a bit of that kind of thing. But I also just like the medium. I don't know. When I was in design school, I was doing a lot of like these little art journals, like my personal stuff, cutting up magazines, sticking stuff down, drawing over them, writing over them. And they were like all these little mini collages as well. But I've just, yeah, I don't know. I just, I enjoy the immediacy, like the quickness of being able to get a result with it, and yeah, and I've become pretty good at it. Like I've got my own way of working now, and an aesthetic that feels like
Yeah.
my own.
So you like the
Yeah,
efficiency? You like the efficiency of it?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and
Interesting.
the cleanness of it. Like I'm very much a designer. It's like
Okay.
it's funny. Like if I was painting and I think I've made a mess, or even if I make a collage and I think I've done something messy, it's like the cleanest fucking thing you've ever seen. Whereas then I've gone to other artist studios where there's just shit everywhere, and I'm so ordered and like, and yeah. So the cleanliness of it and the ability to like, it's very designer, yeah, thinking for sure.
Right. That's so good, man.
I mean, a lot of graphic
Yeah.
designers are collage artists. A
Yeah.
lot of
Are
collage
they?
artists. Yeah, I've met heaps of collage artists, and they're all graphic designers by on the side, or come from a background of it. Heaps of them are.
So,
Yeah,
so you're not down for washing paintbrushes, right?
not big time, nah. And it's like I've got a little 4-year-old who fucking loves to paint, and I'm all for him painting. But it's like I'm
Does
sitting
he?
there like, fuck, he's getting paint everywhere. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm cool with it because he's like loving it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's funny.
What aspects of your son do you see that you identify with yourself?
Um, I mean, he's pretty individual. Like
Okay.
I can see him being able to like handle being playing by himself, or yeah. I mean, he's very chilled out, which is yeah for sure. Well, I'm not
Okay.
necessarily for sure, but
Chill.
it's like there's a similarity there. He's quite adaptable. He's very adaptable and very chilled out for sure. We're very lucky. Like he's pretty easygoing. We're so lucky in that way as parents. If you know what I mean. But he's super adaptable. I mean, he's been dragged around the world his whole life and he's already lived in like 5 or 6 different houses in different countries.
They
And
are
he's at a school
adaptable
now
kids.
with kids who don't. He got dumped in a daycare center with teachers and kids who didn't speak his language and just had to take it on. And he's taken it on. And it's that's super impressive to me, just to watch him have done that, like without too much like hesitation. Like it was obviously tough at first and pretty. I'm sure he was scared, but he's yeah, man, amazing. Like
Yeah.
so resilient and kind of like
Speaking.
I feel like I'm fairly resilient, or at least up to um, like the flexibility that I can adapt to certain situations. He's very good at that. I'm sure I can see that in him, and it's not necessarily come from me, but he does it.
The reason I ask is my son's 5, and
Mm.
his little personality is really starting to come out. You know,
Yeah,
he's really
yeah, yeah.
starting, and yeah, like I'm just starting to identify with him more than I ever have. Like even as
Yeah.
when he was a baby, so and it's been quite confronting for me actually because I'm like I see my qualities in him, but also sometimes like he manifests aspects of myself that I find challenging.
Yeah,
And
right.
Yeah, and it's
Like
confronting.
what? Like
Well,
any
he's super high energy, my son. Like
right?
and it's great. And I was
Yeah,
the same, and I was the same,
yeah,
but it's exhausting to keep up with.
yeah, yeah,
It's like
fully. Yeah,
and also just like I've always been someone that I think a lot, and I have 1,000 thoughts going through my head, and I have always had trouble containing those thoughts. I mean, some might say it's a form of ADHD. I'm not diagnosing him. Definitely, I think it's
yeah,
wonderful, but I can see he has trouble harnessing this energy and these thoughts and ideas going through his head, and he'll
yeah,
jump from one thing to the next, and it's exactly what I was like. So I
yeah,
just think
yeah.
these children are
It's
our
interesting,
best.
right?
They're just our best. They're our best teachers, man.
Oh, for
And
sure.
it's and,
Yeah,
mm, and I don't know
yeah.
about you personally as a new father myself as well. Relatively,
Mm.
is I guess I'm always thinking about like, am I going to be able to navigate this? And
Oh, dude, for sure. I think about that
I
heaps.
want to
Yeah,
do him justice. I want to
yeah,
give him. Is that? Do you ever think that?
heaps, man. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like even just little things you do every now and again where you're like, okay, is this one thing gonna like be the thing that defines like who he becomes, or for whatever reason, or is like, yeah, I don't know, like stupid things. Like, oh, if he's letting him watch too much TV, going to end up, he's going to be addicted. He's addicted to TV. Is he going to be addicted to drugs when he's older or something? Like, you just like weird shit pops into your head. You know what I mean? Like the weirdest shit, and it's scary, man. You'd have no idea, but at the end of the day, I mean, as you know, like you just react to the moments because that's all you can do. And if you're yeah, if you're a good enough parent, and obviously yeah, not a good enough parent, but like if you're attentive or at least like know your what you're doing in terms of like being present in your mind, not just present physically being. It's like that's all you can do. You know what I mean? Like, um,
Have you ever
yeah.
felt that? Have you ever felt that intense love anywhere else with someone else?
Oh fuck no, it's crazy. Like, yeah.
The
I
reason
mean,
I
like, yeah. Like, I don't. There's nothing in the world I've ever felt so much love and emotion for than him as
you've
at
never
all.
felt it with a
No.
partner.
No, I mean,
Interesting.
I could almost say I love Ruby, like, but it's a different type of love. But I mean,
I know it's
it's
different.
like I love,
I know it's
but I
different. Sorry to
almost could
cut.
say I love him more than, not more than her, but it's like holy shit, this thing, it's just completely different. Like I don't know how to explain it, but for sure, like I get emotional, dude. I have, I'm sure you have the same thing. I cry randomly over like the littlest things, but not just because it's like such an emotional experience to see this little thing that's doing stuff. And I don't necessarily think, oh wow, I created this kid and now he's doing this. It's like watching him do things independently makes me trip the fuck out because I'm just like, wow, he's like made a decision to do that and and yeah, watching those things change and yeah, it's like it's a trip. But yeah, for sure, the love is like it's hard to, I don't like talking about it too much because it's like, it's that classic thing. Because before I was a dad, like so many people who were dads would be like, "Oh, you don't understand what it's like until you're a dad," and you get frustrated with that shit because you're like, "Well, I don't really care, man. Like I don't know until." But once it's so true because you don't fucking know until you have a kid. Like, but it's hard not to talk about it, but it's also like, yeah, it's true. It's fully true.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Because it's this real intense, deep love, and I know it's different to that of say the love you feel with an intimate partner.
Mm.
But I'm just kind of like, do we deserve that same intensity of love with an intimate partner? And I'm not. I'm just. This is me just thinking out loud.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know, man. Yeah, it just feels. I don't know how to explain the difference. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious in some way. I guess that like this, I didn't create Ruby, and I have no control over her. And the thing I love about her is like her independent personality and who she is, and her respect for me and my respect for her, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And who, like, but it's just yeah, and when I can be close with her, and there's still that connection. But when I get him, and you like when you're lying in bed with your kid, and you're just like he's asleep, or it's like, or you're just there, having that moment. It's just like unbelievable. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, man. It's deep. It's cosmic, man. It's
Totally.
cosmic.
Yeah.
Childbirth, like witnessing childbirth was a
Oh, fuck.
cosmic
Totally, man.
experience.
It was, yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah,
It was
man.
amazing. Yeah. Ruby fucking nailed it. She did
Where
it
did,
so good.
oh, did she? I'm sure she did.
Yeah, she was.
Where'd you guys get
She
married?
was fucking. We actually, I say wife, so we're not technically married. It's just, I don't
Yeah.
know. So
Okay.
yeah, it's
Interesting.
we're not married. We did have a
Okay.
kind of a wedding thing.
Yeah.
Like we just had a party once with our friends a few years ago
Right.
that you would have thought would have been a wedding, but we didn't technically get married. Although, to be honest, it's come up recently that we probably should because we had some issues with visa, like his visa with Mexico, and like proving that we were a couple, like proving that we were like there were the parents and stuff. Obviously, even besides having a birth certificate and whatnot, but
yeah,
technicalities like that. So it might be worth doing at some point just for the technicality of it.
Well, yeah, it is a legality contract that does.
You can get a certificate of like acknowledgement of your relationship if you can prove.
Okay. Yeah.
You've been together. Fuck, I had a funny story. I got one story for you, man, about being a parent and living in Mexico. It was scary, man. Like, I hadn't thought about this at all. And so Ruby travels a lot. Like, she's away, once a month or every now and again to somewhere. She just got back from Rwanda last week. She was away in Rwanda for a week.
Wow.
And sometimes if she goes somewhere and I have the opportunity to go, I might go and spend a week there. But it means if I do that, it means probably no daycare and I'm basically at home, like chilling with him. So it doesn't always work out. But if I can, I'll go. Anyway, last year I went to Italy and she was over there already doing this conference. And I went with Indy on my own in the plane, like flew out of Mexico with him. And this happened on the way back, but actually, so I went and was there, everything was fine, but I came back on my own as well because she stayed to continue with the works. And when I arrived in Mexico airport at the immigration, they were like, do you have permission from the mum to have this kid? And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, of course. I'm the dad. Yeah. And they hammered me. They took me out into this back room and I was like freaking the fuck out. Yeah, and he was crying because it was like pretty full on. And I hadn't even thought of it, man. So now I anyway, so it got pretty intense for a minute. I was like, holy shit, they're going to like deport me or take him off me or what's going to happen? It's fucking scary. Anyway, I somehow talked them around and it was like, okay, they trust whatever the reason they believe me. So now I take a letter that's like signed and proven. But I told my mum about it and she was like, yeah, when I took you to the UK when you were like 4, your dad wrote a letter. This is like 1979 or 80. I was like, oh, wow, okay. I just hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
So if you ever travel with your kids on your own out of the country, take a letter.
Yeah, well, my eyes have been opened up. My eyes have been opened up to that side of society. I've actually been through a divorce in the last sort of 3 years ago, and I learned a lot in that process about rights and primary care and all that stuff, and shared parental responsibility.
Yeah, right.
It's a side of our society in Western countries that I was really oblivious to, and it's dark. It's dark, and there's a lot of people that are being separated from their children, but there's also elements where people are actually, stealing children or taking the children away from the other partner in a messy breakup, and people are being left separated from their children. And I mean, that instance of people moving them overseas is quite common. I had no idea. So there you go.
Yeah, clearly it happens. And for good reason, they pressed me on it, I guess, for sure.
Yeah, but, man.
Yeah, it was pretty scary for a second.
It would have been. Hey, listen, man, it's been epic. I do want to just quickly ask about, how do you feel about the re-release of your old Omni board graphic?
Yeah, I'm stoked, man. That's great. I love when those things happen.
How'd that come about?
Kerry's a legend. Well, he's just like back doing his thing. And I'm really happy for him because he's just the core Aussie skate guy, like the dude from back in the day. And I guess he stopped doing it for a long time, and because of obviously industry changed and everyone was doing their boards in China, and he probably couldn't compete. But I guess now there's this whole like this whole new generation of us, getting older, all these old guys coming back to skating, and he must have realized there's a market, and there is, I imagine.
Right.
So he approached all his team riders, like he approached all of us, and was like, "Oh, I'm pressing boards. I'm going to release like all your pro models, like as a And so Kerry Fisher's one's out, and Jake Brown, and there's a bunch. It's cool for me. It's like awesome. Like it's great to see. And I mean,
did you design? Did you draw that Star Trooper graphic?
Yeah,
you drew that. No way.
Yeah, I drew all my own graphics, and it was like I would have been in high school, man, or maybe just out of high school, and it was before I knew how to use a computer to do design. So it's all like the lettering's hand drawn, all the like. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just like I'd draw a picture and send it down to him, and he'd turn it into a screen. It was
amazing.
It was sick, and then
That's
it's
so
cool.
rad.
I'm super stoked for that. And people trip out, man. Like it's funny. People like my homies here. I've got like some good skate friends here. There's a pretty cool skate community, but they're all super young dudes. Like they trip out. I mean, I'm probably closer to some of their own dad's age than their age. You know what I mean? And they trip the fuck out. They're like, what? Like, because my dad would never be able to skate like this and it's like we've got this funny relationship where it's like, for me, it's like a whole other life. I mean, I can still skate and roll around, but they're all heaps better than me. But they still kind of like look up to me in a way because I guess of that history or whatever, or like there's something. But anyway, it's cool. I mean, I appreciate it. I can totally appreciate that with modesty. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, it was cool for what it was. But I don't live in the past so much. But of course, I'm proud of that time and proud of that, like, of what having done that for sure.
Do you feel like it's your legacy?
I wouldn't say legacy. It's like, it's a super important thing. I don't know. I'll wait and see when I'm older. I'm just building up all these things that hopefully one day when I'm, whatever, ready to go, I can look back and be like, oh, look at all these fucking crazy things I did in my life. It's all just building up stories that I can remember. Shit I can say, okay, I did that. That was fucking awesome.
Yeah, man. Getting after life. I love it. It's so inspiring. I feel the same. I don't feel done at all. I actually feel more inspired to experience and live more life. I think as you get older too, you're going in it with a level of wisdom and seeing these experiences for what they are. And how important they are.
Yeah. I think it's great that like what's happening a lot with guys our age and the whole thing of like, and I mean, I want to say to you, like I only just started doing a bit of a deep dive into your podcast and realizing what you're actually achieving is like getting guys to talk and getting guys to open up and like share a bit about their lives. And it's important because like, what I was trying to say was like, I love that this whole thing of like guys are starting to realize alcohol is messing with their bodies and messing with their minds and messing with their relationships and like, or drugs or whatever, like the shit from the past, you can't just keep going like that. Like you got to at some point not grow up, but like become a better person. Like just, and it's happening heaps. And I love when I see it. Like, I'm seeing it a lot, and it's really cool. And I'm trying to do that myself, like become, a better person or a better, like. I can't. You're not going to keep having that same party that you had back in 1994. That you can't physically keep it up anyway. But it's the 90s are over, man. Like fuck, it's I loved it. It was awesome, but it's done.
It's done. I also think it takes a lot of hard work to be a good man.
Absolutely.
People say I want to be a good man. I think men have to work at it. It doesn't just happen. And I think
for sure.
I think it's actually
there's pressure.
Go.
Yeah, there's pressure from the past or from stereotypes of what men used to be. I mean, it's obviously changing. We're a bit in the middle of generations. You know what I mean? Like I think we're a bit stuck. Of like, I come from an older, like from my father, who was like very much the man, like of what stereotypes of what men were with the boomers. And I think there's now generations of people who, like, everything that's happening with all the gender equality stuff is incredible, but yeah, I still feel like we're stuck. We're kind of like, okay, we can see all this stuff and it's really cool and we can be these people if we want to be, but it's still in your head, you know, that pressure of like, oh, what does it mean to be a man? And yeah, you're kind of like fighting these old things to be this new person. But
you said it perfectly. What does it mean to be a man? And I think that's where a lot of men are getting confused. I think there's confusion.
Yeah, they're confused, right? Yeah.
Well, I think they're confused, especially when there's empowered women.
Yeah, and it scares a lot of men for sure. It's like
they're scared of it, and they don't know. Yeah. And I think a lot of men have a desire to support them, but then there's the insecurity that comes with it, or they don't know how to be supportive.
Yeah, for sure.
And they don't know what
that sucks because they probably do want to try to, and it's like, it's hard. Like,
generally, I don't think there's any ill intention there. I think
for sure.
It's ignorance and just unconsciousness.
Yeah, and it comes back to education of how, like, and hopefully that's changing. But also society's changing. It's just generally talked about more in terms of like that whole of gender equality. It's more in the news and more you see, like, young people are seeing it and more aware of it. But yeah, for sure, I reckon guys our age are super confused, and it's like you see all these groups of men getting together and trying, or lonely guys, or you're hearing horrible stuff about suicides of like men our age. It's just like fucking sad, man.
Yeah, the culture has shifted. There's no doubt. Men are definitely talking. You know, so.
Yeah, and the men of our age, and what you're doing is, that's what I wanted to say. Is like what you're doing is helping with that. Absolutely, for sure.
Thank you.
People who might listen to this, hopefully listen to it with an open mind, or listen to any other story of anyone who's talking on your podcast, because like it's vulnerability is like the key word, man. It's like we're scared to show our vulnerabilities. Like a lot of men are, for sure, from our generation, or especially the generation before. You just don't show it. And I show it. I'm good at showing it in my artwork. I try and show it in my artwork, and that's what I'm doing. Like when I put an artwork up, and it's interesting when I make an artwork, it's my true vulnerability in that work. And if someone sees that in that, it's like, I'm like, wow, cool. But often, they might not, and it's fine too. But it's like, vulnerability is a key word for men. It's changing men's like development at the moment of like, how do you show that without being having anxiety about showing who you being emotional and being vulnerable.
When you have the courage to express yourself vulnerably through your art, and having the courage to even come on the show now and speak for a couple of hours about your life and expose yourself effectively.
Yeah, exposure,
What it does, it reduces isolation, self-isolation. You know, people are living, they might be around people, but there's a lot of people, and I know it's common to say men, but I think women too are living alone in their mind. And it's so healing when they can identify. So if they identify with an element or something in your artwork, that can provide healing for them. Or they identify with an element of your life story, there's healing. There's real healing there. I get it all the time. And I'm going to say this, like,
for sure,
the podcast is healing me every single episode. And I've said it on here before. It's maybe it's
your own therapy, right? It's your own therapy, bro.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you for being part of my therapy.
Totally, man. And I mean, it's like you can relate it to me making my artwork, because it's like you were saying, I think you said it to me the other day, like how you dealt with like the podcast over the last couple of years of like how you get nervous, like your anxieties over it, doing this thing, because it's like you're putting you're being vulnerable every time you do it, and you do it every single time. But so every time I make an artwork, I'm being vulnerable and putting my heart on the wall. You're putting your heart up on the screen or up on the podcast each time, and being honest and open as you possibly can. It's like the same thing, man. It's like,
but do you find over the years that you don't, the anxiety is less, and you don't care, and you become comfortable with the vulnerability, and you realize that your vulnerability is your greatest strength. Like that's power. Because totally, I don't care now. I don't care now. Like when I first came out on the podcast and said things like, I go to AA, or I don't drink, or I've had childhood trauma, or my dad bashed me, or whatever, I would like for the next week, I'm like, oh my God, I just published that. Like I'm going to burn in hell, or I'm going to get so criticized and judged and ridiculed. This is what was going on in my head, but I was like, and it took so much courage to battle through it. And then what I realized is like, oh, all of a sudden I'm getting an email from a random person saying, thank you so much. Like that happened to me. And I'm sure that you're getting a very similar thing with what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's similar for sure. There's a similarity in that. Yeah.
That's my rant for the day.
No, that's cool, man. But no, awesome. Yeah.
You know what I'm learning? Because I started recording at 5 a.m. here in your lunchtime Mexico.
My afternoon, it's like 3 o'clock now.
Like I've realized I'm very delicate in the mornings. Like I'm emotionally sensitive. Like, and as you were talking a few times, like I could feel myself like getting emotional about what you were saying, and I'm like, but now it's like been a couple of hours and I'm okay. Like, and I've realized I've got to be so kind to myself in the morning. Yeah. Anyway, do you get that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying to you when you got on before, right? Like I'm a morning person as well. I get up early. But in some ways it's my chance to like get some shit done before Indy wakes up. Like, and like I said, like when I love my solitude and my alone time. So as having a 4-year-old, it's like fucking very hard to get. So I often will wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I've literally got 2 or 3 hours to myself. I mean, I meditate and do stuff and like to maybe do some Pilates and stuff in the morning, or I jump straight on because I've got some clients in the UK as well. So if I wake up at 5 a.m., it's their midday, and I can pump some workout, and then I've got all morning to chill with my boy. And you know, my days, like, because of my structure of how I work, and same with Ruby, it's very much not 9 to 5. We're pretty free to like work the hours we want. So if I get up at 4 and work from 4 till 7 or whenever he wakes up, I can smash out a heap of work, and then I can hang out with him from 7 till lunch or something. Like,
dude.
And then I can work again in the afternoon if we get a nanny to come for a few hours or something, or he goes to daycare or whatever. So I'm pretty lucky with that for sure in terms of the structure of my day to day. I feel very privileged with how we we've done it for ourselves. I mean, we've made it that way. It's not necessarily privilege, but we have the privilege of being able to do it as who we are from maybe. But
lifestyle by design.
Yeah, it's cool. We've got a good setup.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that you have to work to get into that position. Like,
for sure.
There would have been some really hard times, and you had to really figure this out and work hard at it.
We work hard, and we do work hard. It's like, I'm sure, you know, my family, some people probably joke around of like, oh, fuck, Teeks lives in Mexico, he's like living the dream life. But I do take advantage of being here and we go and do stuff when we can. We're still, you know, but I might work for like 4 days solid so that I can take 4 days off. But it's because I'm lucky enough that I keep my own hours, and she can keep her own hours, that we can do that. And so it might feel like, we're just cruising around enjoying life, which we are for sure. But yeah, it's still working.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you are. Working. Listen, man, it's been so epic, and I ask all guests to come to the podcast with a cause they want to support or advocate for. So, have you got something for us?
I mean, has anyone said Skater Stand yet?
No.
I want to say.
Maybe
anyway, I want to give up Skater Stand. I was thinking about it, and I mean, I do work for a lot of different funds and foundations and stuff, but even just talking about them before, I was like, man, I strongly advocate for everything they're doing, and just working and supporting young kids and young women. So yeah, definitely anyone who feels like contributing to Skater Stand, it's very easy to get onto their website and donate $20 or donate whatever, but also go on there and just watch some of their videos and learn a bit about them, because it's crazy what they've done. They're in South Africa now and a bunch of other countries. Yeah.
Service work, man. It's the great life hack to happiness. Go and be of
and it's
service.
amazing skateboarding. Like, how good is that skateboarding? Had a whole other level of doing that, and now listening to like Ty and listening to Mulhall talk about their skate clinics and all that stuff. It's the same. That's the same thing, man. It's the same as, and it's super cool to be able to do that and give that back for those guys.
Well, me and Ty got into a debate though about capitalism though, like.
Yeah, right.
But
in terms of
well, in terms of getting it, making money and stuff, but
making money off of it.
But ultimately, I mean, Ty's one of the nicest guys in the world. Like it's based in, inspiring and helping others. And I think that's where the good feelings are. I think that's what I'm driven by. Like, I'm a hedonist at the end of the day. It's like, if going to help someone is going to give me some good feels, great. It's a win-win. Like that's what I'm looking for. So, so hopefully if you are, anyway, so if you're listening, scroll down and I'll put a link. I'll put a link to Skater Stand in this episode's show notes. Like Steve said, click on it, see if you can donate or, see if you can be involved. I always believe that giving.
There's other ways to, do it. Just watch there. Be aware of them.
Yeah, man. So
that's cool.
Yeah, Steve. Dude,
thanks, dude. That was cool, man. It was, fun.
You look well, man. You look healthy.
I'm healthy for sure. Yeah, I feel
Mexico.
Healthy. I still drink a little bit. Like, I'm not fully. I went through a phase of like, I quit drinking for a bit and had to like probably break that whole thing a bit. But now I feel comfortable enough that I can have a beer or two here and there. But I mean, for sure. I mean, you have to be kind of have your head together when you've got a 4-year-old who's going to wake up at 6 a.m. and want to play Lego with you. Like, I can't be hungover anymore. That's for sure. It's fucking the worst.
Are you on a burrito diet, taco diet? What are you eating?
Tacos and ceviche and maybe a beer or two here and there.
Nice.
A lot of ceviche at the moment. We're close enough to the beach. We get pretty fresh seafood.
What's the closest beach? Puerto Escondido.
Puerto Escondido, yeah, and it's gotten closer. It used to be like about 6-hour drive because you'd have to go over the mountains, but now there's a highway that's almost fully open, but you can drive it. It takes about 2.5 hours.
Oh, nice.
Which is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder what that place is like now in terms of development. Is it being developed pretty heavily?
It definitely would have. When were you there? Like
2000.
Like 10 years ago?
20 years, like 20 years ago.
Oh, dude, it would have changed a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so powerful, the ocean in Mexico. It's like
it's freaky. It's scary, dude.
Yeah, deep ocean power there. Yeah. Can't be underestimated. Actually, another question: how do you deal with the temperature there? It's quite warm?
The heat?
Yeah,
it's pretty hot. Yeah, it gets pretty brutal for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hot now. I'm kind of sweating a bit, but it's like after the sun's kind of coming in the afternoon. Yeah, it's hot, man. Yeah, I mean, I can't complain, right? But they have wet season and dry season, so it's probably about to piss down rain in a minute. Get pretty heavy storms right now. But yeah, it's the heat. A couple of weeks ago it was brutal, but
was it?
Yeah, I mean, you just don't go out in the middle of the day. If you can help it. Skating's hard.
Yeah. I can imagine, dude. I can imagine.
I see kids out skating in beanies and shit. And you're like, wow, dude.
I don't know. I remember I was like when I was living in Bali, same thing. Like the hot, like in the peak hot days, they'd be cruising around in black jeans and wearing black jeans and a hoodie, like more because it's like a novelty for them. It's the opposite to what they could. Yeah. So
anyway,
adapt. You adapt, right?
I'm enjoying life, man. Enjoying life here. I'm definitely healthy. Pretty happy generally. Life's not perfect. I'm in a relationship of like almost 20 years. With a 4-year-old kid, like, it's not easy, man. It's not easy, but it's like, 2004, so coming up, 17, 18 years.
Yeah.
Man, we're doing our best. I try my best to be, like I said, pretty chilled and pretty on top of my whatever anxiety levels and mental health game. But it's like, it's not easy, bro. Like I deal with some shit here and there, but fuck, I'm loving this little dude. Fuck it. As soon as I get off here, I'll go see what Lego he's got ready for me.
That's so rad. Kids love Lego.
If you check out my Instagram, bro, I post up. I'll hook you up on my close friends list because I post his little inventions that he makes.
Rad.
Pretty regularly. They're sick. Yeah, I'm a full
So
proud
good.
dad with that shit. Like it's hilarious.
Yeah, because I only use the Instagram to promote the podcast, so I don't put I don't put anything of my kids on there.
Yeah, I
So
don't put personal stuff of him. Sometimes I put a photo of him on my general page, like if there's something cute or something whatever relevant. But I try not to post too much stuff of him. There's at least just amongst my close friends, just because we're overseas too, and it's like my friends appreciate it. My family definitely appreciates it. It's cool. Yeah, but I wouldn't post it on randomly too much of him.
Cool. Well, I look forward to you being in Australia, man, and I'd love to have you back on the show.
Dude, I'll let you know when I'm back.
We'll do an in-person one and get a little skate in. So, all right, we'll leave it there.
Thanks heaps, dude. Thank you so much.
Mr. Steve TIERNEY, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.